Okay, I think we can begin. So, hello there, everyone. My name is Stacy Gorkoff. I am the VP of Marketing and Channel Development here at INETCO. I just wanted to start by saying a big thank you to all of you for taking time out to join us today. I'm very excited to be here, and even more excited to be taking a deep look into what I think is one of the oldest KPI in self-service history, availability, and really looking at how it's being reinvented today. I'd also like to extend a warm welcome to our guest speaker, Neil Skates. Neil has been in ATM operations and consulting for over 15 years. He recently joined Fiserv in 2017 after a long career with IBM as the global ATM subject matter expert. Now, although Neil says he resides in the UK, I would say he spends the majority of his time trotting the globe and loves to meet with banks to discuss everything from end-to-end self-service solutions to ATMs, etc. He is actually in Kiev at this very moment. Hi, Neil.
Hi, and good afternoon, morning, or evening to everyone.
And just to take care of one housekeeping detail in advance here, if you do have questions, enter them into the chat. We are recording this session. We will be sending out a link to this along with the white paper that we've spoken about in some of the promotions. This will be coming out in the next 24 hours. So with that, let's move into what we're actually talking about today. The first thing we'll do is take a deep look into how the impact and the scope of availability is evolving, especially as we shift our focus and start organizing more around how customers experience the business instead of putting products and functionality at the forefront. Then we will move into more of a discussion around the emerging data and the solution requirements. And what you'll notice is that a lot of these are focused on limiting what we call the intelligence lag and making it easy to move routine transactions and services to the digital realm. Finally, we'd like to leave you with some key recommendations for reinventing your self-service availability strategy. And of course, at the end of this, we can open it up for questions and discussion as well. Now, let's start off by being very, very clear. Availability as a key performance indicator, it's not going away. But what it means when it comes to the ATM, the self-service channels out there, is definitely changing. I would say 20 years ago, if you looked at unavailability, you could get away with it. You know, essentially what that translated into for a lot of banks and FIs was more traffic in the branch. And even 10 years ago, customer tolerance was dwindling, but we had these strong reservoirs of trust that we had built up with our customers over years and years. And this definitely helped dampen the impact of an unavailable situation. Now, if we fast forward to today and we start looking at what unavailability means now, none of us really know what the impact is of this. We know there's revenue loss. We know there's a possibility of customer churn and silent defection. We know that there's a wider service impact, especially as we're moving towards more branch transformation and more services and transactions actually being transported into more of a digital realm. We know that the service impact now extends way beyond just withdrawals and deposits. And of course, we see the customer also changing. You know, at this point, if there is an issue with availability, for most customers, they're like, oh, well, that's okay. You know, we'll just go bank with someone more reliable. What their expectation is set upon is what we call always-on service. So we've touched on customers and how some of their changing habits and expectations are a driving factor behind reinventing availability. But there's also other key factors for us to consider as well. Advancing technologies such as more sophisticated ATMs, more third-party applications and services being offered at the ATMs. Also, any type of technology that's actually enabling us to gain a better access to data and perhaps allow us to raise the bar when it comes to an always-on network. This is all stuff for us to consider, and there are factors behind us changing the way that we actually look at availability today. So other things that are happening out there, increasing competition, we all know what the effects could be from some of these under-regulated GAFAs, as we call them, the Googles, the Apples, the Facebooks, the Amazons coming on board. These companies are large technology companies. They're experienced in digital. They come with a large customer base, and believe it or not, they come with a large trust. We talked about this, what I call the reservoir of trust. Well, a lot of these technology companies, there was a survey that actually came out from Bain not too long ago where essentially they were saying that customers were feeling the same trust levels with these technology companies as they have traditionally with their banks. Well, that tells us, again, there's like an increase in competition. The other thing that's really, really changed is the banking priorities themselves. We see more focus on customer centricity and, of course, profitability. And this is including different initiatives such as delivering this amazing end-to-end customer experience, but also the branch transformation and some of the digital transformation efforts we're seeing out there today. Now, with that, what I'd like to do is actually start off with a poll question. And this is a level set for us. This is for us to understand who's on the line today, where are we at. This could be a multiple answer question for sure, but really it's trying to get down to who is currently measuring availability in your organization right now. Is it IT ops or ATM operations that own that? Are we starting to see it expand outside of that realm? And perhaps it's more like a channel management team who's interested in availability, but of course that shift from the operational focus to the customer focus is happening. We would love to see and hear from you. I'm just going to skip over to the results, and I think everybody should see those now on their screen. Please text me in the chat room if there's any issues with this. And Neil, you may want to comment on this as well, but I find it very interesting that IT ops is actually the key department versus ATM systems operations. And then there's a few folks in here that aren't actually measuring availability at all, which is, okay. And I'm actually glad that you're at this session today because we can help you with that path. Very, very interesting. So it's definitely the IT ops team, ATM operations that we see as the key teams that own availability. And what I wouldn't be surprised at is how many of you actually feel like that metric may be shifting so that it's always going to be there for operations, but all of a sudden it's a metric that gets worked into the way that fraud teams, the way that channel management teams, the way that all these various teams that still touch the end-to-end customer experience actually look at the way that they're able to affect what's going on within their networks themselves, and of course with the customers. So as these answers flow, go ahead, Neil.
Yeah, so it's interesting we've got a few others. It'd be interesting to find out who measures availability, the ones that have answered other.
Yes, very true. So if anybody wants to share what other is, we'd love to see that. Okay, I think that these results are actually slowing down. I'm just going to close out this poll and hand it over to Neil to take us through the evolution of availability.
Okay, well, thank you. And interesting results. We'll analyse it a bit more later. So I'm going to talk through the evolution of how availability was measured and how we're suggesting it's moved forward. There was a time where we just measured or looked at availability as a measurement of the operations team, mainly how the ATM device was performing. So it takes into account hardware, software components within the machine, and generally reported to be up or down. When it was down, it was fixed, we hope, and when it was up, of course, it was available. The simple formula, as you see there, standard availability formula. Obviously, you remove some exceptions. but very easy and simple to measure. We then moved on to lost opportunity. We realised that a percentage availability doesn't actually mirror or show completion rate when it comes to transactions. So people started to move to a more granular approach to bridging operational performance to customer impact by measuring or trying to measure lost opportunity. This lost opportunity you can take into various parameters: location, ATM types, time of day, and peak transaction time. And it can be really valuable to when to schedule maintenance, for instance, schedule repairs, or decide on which device to fix now as a result of what transactions are coming up. So the example you see, ATM A is on a downward curve, ATM B is on an upward curve. If both went down at the same time, it's much more beneficial to fix ATM B rather than ATM A, because that's the potential of losing more transactions. So moving a little bit further on, people considered that actually the device is just part of the whole end-to-end availability. We're starting to see how is it affecting the customer. The ATM may be up, but the network down, i.e. the ATM is on, but no one can use it. So we started to look at measuring each component of the device and the channel, or the channel, at each component level. And each component needed to have its own measurement. So each component is very important. So it's like the Christmas lights. If one failed, the whole lot would fail, unless you've got resilience, of course, and you can take that into consideration. This makes the equation now much more complicated. Each component needs to be measured individually. And you need real-time technologies or systems to give you that holistic visibility into this end-to-end chain. And the ability to monitor, in this case, core banking, the LAN, the switch, of course, the ATM hardware, software, all the networks, the third-party internal software, one centralized view was absolutely key to meeting customer demands and their service expectations. So the siloed management of applications, network, authorization hosts, ATM, does not cut it anymore, especially with these added services and applications moving to the self-service ATM device. This is a complex channel. Also, although monitoring transaction is key, there's also different people within the banks or FIs that want to know about availability in different ways. So thinking about availability may impact, of course, the customer experience, and therefore impacting different personnel, such as CIOs, IT operations, channel managers, fraud, of course, cash, each holding different responsibilities, but ultimately the same level of responsibility for that customer. So let's look at some of those in detail. So this table and the following slide are in the white paper, so I'm going to pick on a couple. So, for instance, the ATM monitoring team, they tend to be interested in, is the hardware available? Is there a cash incident? How are my vendors performing? How's my devices performing? How are individual manufacturers performing, etc.? They have quite a siloed view. Whereas if we move to the next slide and look at channel managers, they're interested in how much revenue have I lost due to the transactions that weren't complete or were not able to be performed due to the outage. How profitable are my ATMs? So they have responsibility for customer usage, even ATM placement, profitability, reporting, etc. So a completely different view of availability. And this is also for all the other various roles within within the bank or FI. So the final phase or final move we're seeing banks or FIs moving towards are to measure availability and the impact on profitability and revenue growth. We all know that self-service is related to the successful completion of all transactions, us and us, them and us. And transactions, a lot of transaction results in a loss of revenue. If a transaction doesn't complete, the impact is greater than just that revenue. We have this long tail effect, this trust effect. To get the device back to the transaction rate it was before it went down, especially in a prolonged outage, takes a long time. Especially now how easy it is to move to another bank, to a competitive bank, or alternate sources. People suddenly realise they don't need cash. So while controlling the lost revenues and keeping customers happy, it's really important to the bottom line to uncover these new revenue opportunities. So uncovering these new revenue streams within the self-service channel requires you to keep pace with the digital habits and expectations of the customers. This means identifying shifts in behaviour and acting upon them, of course, in a cost-effective way. And insights gained from transaction intelligence and predictive modelling can really help that. For instance, new customer acquisition. Are there other services you can offer to engage customers? Customer satisfaction at the device. Customer satisfactions. Are your ATMs intuitive? What's the common sequences at the ATM? Do customers always do a balance and then a cash out? Or do they do two cash outs because they're trying to not get the high denomination note, etc.? Cross-sell. Do the ATM support converse transactions with the other channels, mobile and online? Can you complete one transaction on the other channel? Upsells. Are you able to engage customers in the higher value transactions? Where can you expand the customer's business with your organisation? How can you bank deliver more? And lastly but not least, ATM service and device placement. Do the customers have access to your ATM? Is it easy for them to access it? Are your ATMs in the right location? Are the functions on the ATMs correct? All of these can be taken into account and monitored through a transaction monitoring system. So, in summary, we've come a long way from measuring pure ATM up and down time. We've moved through the lost opportunity, to transaction availability, to the customer experience, then ultimately to the profitability and revenue growth opportunities as a result of having all this data. So, I would like to also introduce another poll and appreciate if you can complete this. So what factors do you or your organisation consider when you measure availability today? So if you'd like to, and some of you are already, and we'll give you a few minutes to think and react to this, and I'll display the results so you can see them coming up. So yeah, as we see it, ATM up and down time, very historic. Of course, those that don't measure availability or unavailability might struggle with this one.
I find these results quite telling in terms of where we're actually at in terms of looking at availability. It's nice to see that transaction availability is being considered, especially as we start moving into that realm of, okay, you know, operational focus has been so important, but as Neil said, moving to customer to profitability focus, this is going to really require a lot of thought into data itself. And it looks like there are a few of you that are definitely looking at how does my availability relate to these other various aspects. how do I start measuring things in terms of the end customer experience itself? But yeah, definitely ATM uptime and downtime is still the key metric here.
Yeah. So it looks like the poll is slowing down responses.
Okay.
So let's close it in 3, 2, 1. Let's close the poll. I'll close it. There you go.
Excellent. Thanks. Okay. And I'm going to move into giving you a little bit of a summary of some of the key availability requirements that we're seeing coming up today. So as I said, here's a summary. Most of these support the movement from that operational focus to customer and profitability focus. And I think what we're seeing in these emerging requirements is that a lot of them are designed to get you to a point where you understand what customers are experiencing, how customers are behaving, and ways to make your ATM channel more profitable. There's no doubt about it that this may require investment and some thought into strategy and new solutions, as well as data accessibility that can help you do things such as minimizing this device availability and cash availability issues. So this would be across your ATM fleet. And essentially what we want to do there is fix the incidents and minimize the number of times that we have incidents based on the potential level of impact. That ties in nicely to phase 2, the lost opportunity, and trying to measure that. Tracking real-time customer transactions from end to end. This is more about being instantly notified should there be slowdowns, failures, and anomalies, things that are affecting the end customer experience and essentially stopping a transaction from completing the way that a customer expects it to. Then there's this idea of proactively identifying and resolving issues. Now these could be related to network communications, they could be application issues, they could be device, but they could also be host authorization response time issues. Identifying those, coming up with a plan, being able to start identifying when there's a good chance that there's going to be an issue occurring. Perhaps it's due to a certain bottleneck pattern, perhaps it's due to a specific transaction type. This is all information that's going to help you, again, improve that key performance metric and help you expand so that you're starting to have a proper effect when it comes to the customer experience. Analyzing customer usage and behavioral data. So this is a nice add-on. Now that we've figured out how to track real-time transactions and get this data should be used to track the profitability, to track what customers' requests are and what their expectations are. And then making transaction data easily available organizational-wide. So this could be for predictive modeling, it could be on-demand analysis. Really, we're looking at ways to make it easier to collaborate between all of these various teams and, of course, the applications that touch the end-to-end customer experience. Now, just a word about tapping into your transaction data. We call it the gold mine. Collecting and comparing end-to-end transaction data, especially when we're talking about multi-channel environments or omni-channel environments, this has become way less resource intensive and easier to do thanks to those technology advancements that we had mentioned earlier. And this could be everything from real-time monitoring to scalability to data storage and streaming, and then of course the data visualization solutions or the analytics solutions that exist today. It's now possible, very, very much in the realm, to automatically collect information and data, to decode it, to have it correlated, and get it into what I call a ready-to-use format without the need for extra software agents, traffic loads, or massive code changes. By establishing a centralized data hub, or what we like to call a real-time data pipe, we think that this information becomes very accessible to multiple teams, to all the various applications. Essentially, we're looking at using data anytime, anywhere, for anyone, and doing this in a timely, cost-effective manner. So this is important to think about, especially if we are seriously going to be trying to meet the needs of the customers today. Now, talking about needs, what we wanted to leave you with is an idea of a solution checklist, or what does the technology stack need to include today? Well, we know device management capabilities. If we go back to phase 1 where we were looking at uptime, downtime, device management capabilities are key to any type of availability strategy or solution stack. Cash management capabilities, making sure that your ATMs, your self-service channel is full of cash, but it's also utilizing that cash in the best possible ways. So being able to understand balances at each individual ATM, knowing that if there's any critical time factors about ensuring that ATM is actually delivering the cash that the customer expects, these are things that we want to take into consideration, and that brings some focus to the cash management capabilities that you've got. Incident management and flexible real-time alerting capabilities. So as we get into real-time applications, real-time payments, this becomes more and more important. Also, the holistic, always-on transaction-level monitoring. So instead of going into the component-based type of monitoring, understanding what's going on that whole entire end-to-end transaction chain. Transaction data collection and streaming. So this is getting into that idea of a real-time data pipe that extends availability outside of the operational realm, but also to those people that need that information and that data to improve customer experience and to improve profitability. And then there's this idea of predictive modeling, the machine learning, and just using this data to start identifying not only where there may be opportunities that exist in terms of better operational performance, but also using that information to start identifying new revenue opportunities. So going beyond this thought of, okay, I know there's revenue associated with each transaction, but what if we can start using data, behavioral data, profitability data, understanding how each payment rail is actually performing, and start building out things that are reliant, more faster, better decisions based on the actual patterns that we're seeing, and better customer segmentation comes with that as well. So with that, let's ask another question here, and this is to give us an idea of where we're all at when it comes to the technology stack, what we call the availability technology stack. Have we advanced past device management? Have we started thinking about incident management and transaction level monitoring? It would just be good to get a feel from everyone as to where we're at. Let's see here. So yeah, as we can see, this is this is kind of reflective of, there are some people that are still thinking about it but haven't actually put any type of an availability stack together. Again, we hope that you're getting some ideas from this. We can see that device management is definitely a fallback. It's something that people understand. That's reflective of the other answers that we've seen on the earlier poll questions as well. Transaction level monitoring seems to be something that people are definitely interested in and have implemented. And what I love to see from there is if you've done it right and you actually have a solution that can expand into that data collection, the next few steps in this progression should be easy. Looking at data collection and streaming to your various applications, looking at putting the predictive modeling and the algorithms on top of that data, the machine learning techniques, and then also developing the on-demand analytics strategy. That all falls into, once we've got the basics covered, that's the fun stuff, I like to say. Neil, did you have any comments about these results?
No. I think if you look at the curve, it's as I thought, if you go 1 to 5, it seems to be perfect. So yeah, this is quite interesting, very interesting. It's good to see some people are doing on-demand analytics as well.
That's
like
great.
Slowing down.
Okay. Yeah, I think I'm going to close it out. All right. I think I did close it out successfully. So with that, let's let's stop and let's recap about what we talked about and what we learned today. Now, definitely as the scope of availability continues to evolve, so do the people, the data, the solutions required to keep up and keep measuring this KPI. Some of the recommendations that we have for you, definitely keep your traditional operational ways. This is your device management ways and your ways of measuring incident management. But make sure that you've kept up to date with the latest methodology and the latest solutions to do this, for sure. Now, the two newer parts that we would recommend layering on top of that, one is to enhance your availability strategy with real-time transaction monitoring and analytics solutions. So we want to think about starting to monitor the performance of what your customers care most about, and that's definitely transactions. Let's look at ways to implement the visualization that we need to see what is happening across the entire end-to-end transaction chain, and immediately isolate any issues that are affecting transaction completion rates. And again, at the back of this, what you also want to start asking yourself is the way that I'm actually starting to look at this end-to-end transaction data, do I have a way to collect it? Do I have a way to share it? Is there some value to perhaps bringing in some of the other teams, the fraud management teams, the cash management teams, it could be the analytics teams. It's those other teams that affect the end-to-end customer experience. And that actually ties into recommendation number 3. So it's the ability to share and analyze your device, your application, and your transaction data, doing this in a timely, collaborative way. So moving again past tracking components, moving past a siloed approach to data, and actually starting to think about centralization, thinking about how you can make information available to answer key questions around customer experience, around ATM profitability. These could be questions such as, how is my ATM fleet performing? What task flow and services do customers prefer? A visibility, an ongoing visibility that allows you to track how profitable your ATMs are. Where do you need to put the next ATM, and how are cash levels doing at each individual ATM and fleet level? So these are just some questions that are out there right now that with the proper harnessing of data, you'll be able to answer a lot more easily. And with that, I think we can open it up to a question and answer period. I do see that there are some questions that have come in. Let me see. What do we have here? So the first question is something that I think, Neil, you and I can probably tag team on. It's predictive maintenance is something we are working on. Lack of real-time data is affecting the ability to deliver this. Are others utilizing real-time data flows and getting good real-time results and predictions? And do you want to start, or would you like me to start with that one?
Well, I can start from a device through Device Manager. Absolutely, real-time, because we're getting more and more detailed data from each device. We're not only getting fault data, we're getting errors, so we call it wounded. You can then put those into a predictive engine, or thresholding, as some people are calling it, and seeing real results. You can then fix the device at a convenient time to the customer and, of course, to your engineers. So if you enhance that with transactional, over to you, Stacey, you've got even more of a offering.
Yeah, for sure. And I think, our approach to gathering this data has been to do so off the network. So what are the ways that we can tap into information but be vendor agnostic, not have to rely on, the need for software agents to be sitting on every ATM? What is a way that we can actually start tapping into data and do so consistently across all channels? Because I think your ability to do predictive maintenance is only going to be as good as your ability to gather the data. And if there's issues there, a little bit of creativity on how we're gathering that information. And of course, the next step to that is always making sure that that information is actually, that it's cleaned, that it's actually put into a what I like to call a ready-to-analyze state. So working with technologies, this has actually become a lot easier to do. It may be something that I think for the person that's asked the question, you may want to stop and ask your company, are you willing to do a little workshop around how you can better harness that information and those data flows? And I think that's going to help. And it's funny because this question actually ties in. I think you've spurred something here, because the next question that came in was, which of Fiserv's products are currently being fed data from INETCO, and how is it being used today?
Okay, so great question. Just to add a little bit to what you said, predictive to the other question, predictive, if you can start predicting when a device is going to fail, but also using transaction analytics, predict when how much use that device is going to have, your predictive engine becomes so much more powerful. So we're using INETCO to enhance our offering, as in Fiserv's offerings, in probably 4 of our products. Device Manager, which is our real-time monitoring, device monitoring system. So we're enhancing that with INETCO, and we enhance the reporting from it as well. So enhance the statistical data for the incident management, i.e. knowing which device to fix at the right time. We also use INETCO to feed ICOM. Traditionally, we take data via the ATM through the switch. Using INETCO off the wire, we can start taking real-time transactional data and therefore running cash forecasting near real-time, or intraday as we call it. Other uses of INETCO are through our reconciliation product. Reconciliation from the ATM is historically very hard because of electronic journals, and they often change. So if you have a process to extract electronic journals, you often have to change it very often. We take the data from the wire using INETCO, we lose that requirement. And lastly, we're using it for fraud management. Again, transactional data, the expanse of data you've got there, we're inputting that into our fraud system. So we're actually using them in very, very many ways. And overall, of course, we're using it to enhance reporting, wrapping around all of these products. Thank you for the question.
Great. And there was another one that flowed in. I need to identify a fraudulent transaction in the ATM when a stealer enters with either a skimmed card or stolen card. And I think there's a few pieces to that question for sure. Now, because we see real-time data and we're able to set up real-time alerts around specific bin ranges, specific card actions, such as high velocity or a higher volume of transactions occurring at specific ATMs, and those could be on-us ATMs, it could be off-us, it could be happening at foreign terminals. We can definitely help with the identification of what we call front-end attacks. So even if, even if a transaction does not make it to the switch, let's say there's some sort of malware sitting on the switch, because we look at the end-to-end transaction, we can also identify when perhaps there's something that's happening that looks like a transaction is completing as it should, but really it never makes it to the back end. Those are the types of alerts, and I actually have a white paper, Suresh, that I will share with you that actually details out the top 10 alerts that we would be identifying for fraudulent transactions. And it'll give you some idea of what you can do and ways to think about how to capture various things that are happening on your network, especially on the front end. And if anybody else is interested in that white paper, it's a different one than the one that we'll be sharing with this webinar, but just let me know. Good. Okay. Does real-time transaction monitoring help with cross-sell opportunities? So I think with this question, I think the first thing to realize is that for us, a transaction is a transaction. It doesn't matter where it starts. It doesn't matter where it ends. If it's starting at the mobile, if it's ending, perhaps on an ATM, we can monitor those transactions. There's no boundaries. It's not like, one channel is siloed from another. So in that way, because we can collect that data, because we can actually monitor those transactions in real time, I would say that real-time transaction monitoring is pretty important to cross-sell. I also would say that the more data that you can gather around customer usage and segmentation, what are the services that they're actually interested in using, what is the what is the pattern in terms of how they use them, are there specific promotional offers or things that they've clicked on that you want to trigger the next kind of just-in-time promotion, you can start looking at transactional data to help you with that as well. So, good question. Okay. Oh, next one. How are people actually measuring customer experience today? So, Neil, do you want to start with that one, or do you want me to start?
You start, I'll think.
Okay. You think. I can share with you some of the experiences or things that our customers are measuring right now. There's something called a Net Promoter Score that we see in North America, and this is done through survey, but it's also taking into account a lot of these various factors around transaction completion and availability. So Net Promoter Score is something that a lot of the banks here like to focus on and to use as kind of a monthly gauge to see how they're doing and how their customers are ranking their services. Transaction availability, so looking at completion rates, is another way that you can definitely start measuring the customer experience. Revenue is always tied to that, so are we seeing more revenue? Are we seeing more customer loyalty? And that actually ties into customer churn as well. And I think there are some banks out there that are starting to monitor the churn rate of customers and using that to help them understand how customers are feeling about the services that they're delivering today. Neil, anything else you'd like? Okay.
Yeah, I'll add to that. I know banks. I mean, it's so easy to move account or banks now. So a lot of banks are now asking the question, why? And I visited one bank last year, and a lot of responses was due to technology availability. So, a way of measuring customer experience is how many customers are disappearing or joining you because of your infrastructure and your ability to enhance that experience through the endpoints you need to. So, yeah, that's a real one, absolutely real. The customer churn is key.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
And I think one other kind of interesting point that ties into this question is that almost every role that touches the end-to-end customer experience, they all seem to have some sort of a factor or an element in their performance metrics that's tied to the end customer experience. As a channel manager, you may be looking at service, usage. The ops team is looking at resolving performance issues, mean time to repair, et cetera, getting to things before customers know about them. The fraud team is looking at proactive ways to reduce the risk and looking at, lower impact in terms of, revenue lost and customer churn due to feeling of fraudulent behaviors and anomalies. These are all tied to the end customer experience in some way, shape, or form. So the answer to this is it's going to take your bank. Every bank seems to be a bit different, and it would take getting together with a bunch of these teams to really truly understand and define those metrics to move forward. Okay. Does real-time transaction data does the real-time transaction data feed record customer details? Is this too dangerous? I think this is a data question. Yeah, PCI question, which is a very, very good question, and of course something that we're all thinking about 24/7. So with INETCO Insights, we do meet all PCI DSS requirements concerning storage, display, anything to do with handling of what we call sensitive cardholder information. So this means that information, including the track 1, the track 2 information, the PANs, the CWs, the actual encryption of the PIN blocks, all of this is discarded. it's truncated or subjected to one-way hash. It's us determining what's appropriate depending on the operation of the INETCO Insight system and how it's being used, really. So as a result, like I think a lot of the sensitive information, none of that is ever stored on INETCO Insight, nor is it displayed to users of the actual product in normal operation. So that's good. Okay. What analytics strategy, tools, technologies are helping banks to reduce fraud currently?
Wow. Well,
that's a big question. For
a
sure.
webinar.
Yeah, exactly. So what analytics strategy? Definitely moving to real-time data analytics. There's a trend towards moving away from needing a PhD to do your analytics. It's called on-demand analytics. So being able to get in there, have tools and technologies, be it a Tableau interface, be it a Cognos interface, tools that can help you visualize information and make it very, very easy to utilize that information are going to be key to the front end. On the back end, we're seeing the real-time data pipe. As we mentioned, this is something that's key to any analytics strategy out there, really understanding how you can harness that information across all your channels, being smart about it, making sure that it will scale with your business. This is very, very important. And then on the fraud front, we're seeing a number of different tools that are being used. Fiserv, I think you've got your own fraud tool as well. There is some talk of real-time data being flown into that fraud tool, and Neil, you may want to comment on that. But I think, it's a combination of various layers of defense that you're seeing for sure. You're seeing the analytics strategy, you're seeing the front, kind of the real-time alerting strategy, and then you're seeing the algorithms and things that are being built, the proprietary algorithms that usually live within the more complex fraud management tools themselves that help you to identify specific patterns to your bank. Any further comments on it?
Yeah, the key there is more and more banks are moving to real time. You said that a number of times. It used to be near real time or X hours. It's really key to get that data as close to real time as absolutely possible. Then you can react to it and reduce your loss. So all these tools now are providing real time. I talked about intraday. It's very, very key. Real time, real time, real time.
I would agree. Oh, GDPR, my other favorite subject of the day. Post-GDPR, is it really possible for banks to capture the complete context to identify the scenario?
I'm going to let you answer that one.
Ouch. Okay. So I think that there's definitely, as far as the actual personally identifiable information, or PII as it's often referred to, this is definitely getting a little more anonymized. So anonymity is something that's going to affect your ability to get in and really say, okay, George is right now using terminal ID, blah, blah, blah. Now he's going to do a transaction on the mobile, and now he's going to do, to actually capture each piece of data around an actual customer and know the customer's name will get tougher to do. But that does not mean that you cannot start looking at segmentation and looking at things a little bit differently. And that's looking for patterns. And if anything, this is where your analytics actually becomes even more important, is the fact that you need to start identifying and starting to work through specific patterns and things that are going to creatively help you understand and better serve customers. So I'm not sure, Neil, do you want to add on to that?
it's difficult. It's going to be reviewed very often from now on. Watch this space. So I think you answered it as well as I could. I guess the person who asked the question will ask again if it wasn't clear, or maybe you can contact us afterwards.
I think that would be great too. Now, it does look like we are coming to an end in terms of questions here, but I would like to say if anybody does have anything else to add, if you've got other thoughts that you would like to share with us, our emails are up. We would love to hear from you, even if it's a comment on the webinar, or if anybody does want a copy of these slides, we can make those available as well. We have no issues with that. So with that, again, a big thank you to everyone that has joined us today, and thank you to everybody for participating. There was a good number of questions, and we do hope that you found this valuable. And with that, we'll bring it to an end. Have a great day, everyone.
Bye.
And we hope to see you in the future. Bye-bye.